Well, that was kind of weird. That song did not end how I thought it would. Maybe it's supposed to loop. Not really sure. Kind of hard to say. Oh well. Made for some decent intro music. Hello, everyone. It's another week. Don't mind me clearing my throat. I'm not sick, I promise. I'm not tired either. I slept last night, which was great. Sorry for the delay in service. We're not here on Friday. It's Saturday. I've been at this for a week and I'm already ruining the stream streak. That should be a thing. No, it shouldn't, actually. That shouldn't be a thing. If anyone from YouTube is listening, don't make that a thing. I can see that getting very toxic very quickly. Yeah, hey, it's another episode of Draft Diary. I'm going to talk about this little book. I'm going to talk about some little book a little more. And we're on the topic of Chapter 33, Secretary, today. Chapter 33 is kind of a weird one. We'll talk about why in just a minute. Is there anything I need to address before we get started? I don't think so. I made a cake today. I went for a run. That was pretty good. Yesterday I was mostly just really tired. Once again, sorry for delaying the stream. I'm sure no one minds. No one ever shows up to these streams, which is fine. It's mostly just the people in the VOD who are maybe seeing this. Hi, people in the VOD. Hope you're having a good time. Thanks for checking out the video. Let's see if you make it through the whole 2-hour ramble session. This is designated as a podcast now, so somebody could just be listening. Hello, people who are listening to the VOD. No shade. Yeah, it's mostly just me talking, so it might as well be a podcast, right? I'm not coming to any conclusions. Robin's here listening, but Robin's always listening. Robin is everywhere all at once, because they're a little bird. Birds are just everywhere, and they're always listening, because that's what birds do. They're very nosy. Yeah, I got nothing. Let's just dive in. Let's just get started here. I wrote a little summary this week because I had some time before the stream. I had like a whole day before the stream. So, yeah, like I mentioned, chapter 33 is a little weird. We start off the chapter and someone is woken by an alarm clock. We continue this motif that we started at the end of chapter 32 with this beeping noise, and it ends up that, hey, if the beeping noise is somebody's alarm clock. And we're introduced to this scene where, it's kind of in their bedroom. This individual, woken by an alarm clock, they go through their morning routine and they get themselves ready for the day that lies ahead of them. And we'll circle back a little bit We haven't gone anywhere. We haven't gone forward very far. But we'll circle back a little bit so that I can address the weird in the room. And the weird in the room here is that this chapter doesn't feature many subject pronouns. And I'm going to struggle to explain what's going on here. Once you read the chapter, even if you just read the first couple paragraphs here on my left, you'll see they're kind of weird. And the reason they're weird is because although we have a POV, we aren't introduced to them. We're left in the dark. There's almost a veil between the reader and the subject at all points in this chapter. There's no subject pronouns. I think I use it sometimes. There aren't any personal subject pronouns. There's no I, there's no they, there's no we. I think there's a he, maybe. And if it is, it's in response to not the subject, but the object. It's always in response to what the subject is interacting with. So there's never pronouns or indicators of who is the subject, but we are led through with this POV character. And while this was an exercise in writing for me, it also was intentionally done. I did this on purpose, right? I'm trying to maintain this sense of unease. At the end of chapter 32, we've almost got this sense that, okay, things are hitting peak weird. We know immediately at the start of chapter 33, beep, 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 click, there was an alarm clock. We're given all of this information right off the hop. And so naturally, we put things together and think, okay, guess that was a dream. I guess that was the dream sequence. And if you weren't following along and you didn't think it was a dream, then okay, this is a definite indicator. I am not being coy about it anymore. Yep, they woke up from the dream. But I'm not certain about it. Are you sure? Wait, what about that? What about the wizard? What about the wizard in white? What about all the people they met? What's going on here? Where did the subject go? And that's what I'm trying to build here. I'm trying to build this sense of unease as we go through chapter 33. Chapter 33 really just slams on the brake, hits the drift, and 180s in the other direction. And that's absolutely intentional. You were supposed to get to chapter 33 and feel like, wait a minute, this isn't the book I was just reading. Reading? Phonetically pronouncing reading. This isn't the book I was just reading. Why is this weird? Why are there no indicators of what I was just being referred to? And that's totally the point. So as I go through here, this is going to be a really brief summary, but just so we know right off the bat here, this is on purpose, and there is a subject, and chapter 33 maintains the. I really wish maybe I should look into that. Maybe I should look into getting trackers for my hands when I do these streams, because I gesture a lot, but y'all can't see it, and that's kind of unfortunate. To be a 2D little box PNG on YouTube streaming for the world to see. If only that were me. Hey, wait a minute. That is me. Anyways, just so we're all on the same boat here, that yes, the chapter is written, it's in the same past tense, it uses the same language, there's nothing weird about it. It uses the same rules. The thoughts are always in italics. The sound effects too here are in italics, which that's a point that might get changed later on, but for the time being, the rules are the same. It's just like the one singular point that is missing is that there's no pronouns. There's no subject pronouns. But we are tied to the subject. We are linked to the POV character. If they are a character, whatever they are, we're not really sure. This is probably going to pick up a mic. I just noticed my pair of scissors on my desk are about to fall over, so I moved them. But to get back to the summary, we are led along with this someone as they go about their commute. They go about their morning commute, and they arrive at an office, and that's where they work. They work at this office where, all of this information is very upfront and center. They are thinking things, and we are essentially, as readers, brought about through this individual's day. And also, we're given clairvoyance, in a sense. We're given a peek. We're allowed to see into their mind. This chapter is very contemplative. A lot of it is just them kind of thinking. They're going about their day. They're thinking as people do. They're completing their work. They're weighing certain aspects of their day, certain aspects of their life. They're planning things. It's just, chapter 33 really just does turn into a slice of life anime, and that's fine. That's what we're going for. However, as this individual goes about their day, things don't really take a weird turn, but they keep thinking about things, and these reoccurring thoughts end up bringing about a series of headaches. And each headache kind of gets worse than the last. At first, it's something they can ignore, but then towards the end of the day, when these intrusive thoughts manifest, they are having a trouble. They're having a trouble. They're having a tough time pushing these thoughts aside. And it's when we get to this crux that the headaches really become an issue, that they decide, okay, well, maybe I'll go take a break from my work. It's at this point that things start to get a little weird, and the chapter culminates. It concludes with the sudden appearance of this nightmare horror monster. It's pretty hideous, it's gross, it's very judgmental, and it assaults the POV character. And that's chapter 33. That's all there is to it. It's pretty short. I don't think the chapter is actually short itself. Our notes, luckily, our notes. When you've got shorts made out of notes, you got norts. Robin wants me to talk about the best character ever appearing, and you'll just have to read the chapter to learn which the best character ever is. Sorry, folks, no spoilers. We live in a spoiler-free society here, for the most part, for a series where I talk about my own book in depth. And yeah, anyways, I'm not talking about the best character. Yeah, you got to go find them. Luckily, they're in the beginning part, so easy, right? It's like, where's Waldo? Easy mode. They're right there. They're not hiding. They're just there. But yeah, the chapter is fairly simple to surmise. It's weird. It's strange. It's good. It acts as an important beat throughout the story, and it very well might be the... I think I've talked about this before. I might split the book into 2 books, especially depending on how long Draft 2 is. Draft 2 is already... I'm like part way into chapter 2, and I've already added like 3 pages, just because there's so much more stuff I have to talk about right up front. I don't know if that pattern will continue, but should I end up with a giant book that I just can't hack parts out of, then chapter 33 might be the last chapter of book 1. I might split the book up into 2. And if it does, hey, chapter 33 might be kind of an important one. But that's a future problem. I'll scroll through the chapters so that anybody who's visually inclined to read can do so at their leisure as we go along, but we're going to jump right into the notes here. As mentioned, we start off here with the alarm going off, or with this POV character. Just debating if it's worth talking about now. I think I'll wait until it comes up. There is something important we should discuss, like, right, why is it a POV character? What happened to Teal? What happened to Teal? We were in a dream sequence. What's going on? And we'll get to that. We'll get to that eventually. And honestly, if you read the chapter, it becomes very apparent what's going on, especially because as this version stands, one gets to the end of chapter 33 and they find chapter 34. So it's pretty apparent that like the weird stuff going on in chapter 33 maybe just doesn't exist. I skimmed past the start of chapter 34, which is kind of embarrassing. But it's... since we're talking about it here in a microcosm, not quite a microcosm, but like under the microscope itself, we'll get to it, right? You'll have questions. I don't know, maybe you're reading the book and then coming over to these little draft diaries is kind of intermediaries, which is sick. That's such a cool way to read the book. But you might come to this point and have a bunch of questions, and we'll get to those. We'll answer them as we go. I should really use this function that lets me slap in chapters as I stream. Maybe one day. Maybe for a different series. Not this one though. I'm too dumb for that. But we start off the chapter. We're in this bedroom apartment, or we're in this bedroom of an apartment. And the biggest thing here I have as a concern is that I want to add a touch of uncanny, disturbing atmosphere to the room, to the whole beginning part. Things right now are just a little too, like I mentioned, slice of life. It's too easygoing. It's too nice. While the writing has shifted to be a little more uneasy, a little more unsettling, the what's on display should mirror that. But it should be something really subtle. Something just like, oh, the room's cold. Maybe there's very little furniture. There's a window in the room, but what's beyond the window, it's not really important right there. Maybe it's just noise. Maybe it's just static. Maybe it's just a blur. Maybe it's just light. It's not really clear. We're just starting off the chapter with just like a crumb, right? Just like a crumb that if you look at it, you go, hey, wait a minute. That's weird. And if you do, right, you start thinking, okay, wait, maybe I should keep thinking about the weird. Maybe I should stay hooked into the weird. Maybe this is important. But if you're not, then you just miss it and you go, okay. And like either way, you're still reading the chapter. It still holds up. It still stands on its own feet. But if you do pick up on the crumb, you go through the chapter kind of with a different mindset. And we're just trying to tease this idea. And we don't want to say it outright. We don't want to say, and I guess I kind of have to talk about what we're getting at, but let me get through these notes first. We don't outright want to say what the big reveal is because, hey, oh, there's a big reveal, if you couldn't tell. We don't outright want to spell that out right at the start, but like I said, we want a little crumb there just so that if somebody's paying attention, they might start thinking, well, this is weird. Well, this is strange. Wait, the strangeness keeps building. Maybe I should be hyper vigilant. Maybe I should be really aware while I'm going through this and not just take what the author is giving me at face value. So the crux of the issue, and yeah, let's just get this out of the way here. The crux of the issue, and it's not an issue, but the thing here, right? Chapter 33 exists as kind of a red herring. We have this scene where somebody wakes up after a dream sequence. And chapter 33 very overtly says, oh yeah, it was a dream. All of that was a dream. It was all really weird, wasn't it? It was all really strange. And we're leaning into a trope here. We're leaning into the fact that like, oh, haha, it was weird and strange because it was a dream sequence and none of that mattered. And we're almost starting to get back into what feels like reality, especially because this segment of the book is contemporary. Most of it is like centered around modern society, right? The POV character wakes up, they've got an alarm clock, they have an apartment, they get dressed, they have a shower, right? They go to work, they take public transit, all very current things that many people use every day. Many people do these things, eat food, generally keep domesticated animals, have apartments, worry about rent and familial relationships. Whereas the rest of the book, we haven't really, like, clearly it's been kind of fantasy-esque. We haven't been dealing with this. We've been talking about like magic schools and wands and wizards. Okay, so we're already out of the norm, but we're using this dream sequence bait and switch, essentially. So we're led into this right off the hop that, okay, yes, it was a dream sequence. And we go through the rest of the chapter, but, and this is why we need to plant crumbs, because it turns out by the time we get to the end of the chapter, we do a double fake where we go, oh no, actually, this was part of the dream too. Do you remember Teal? Do you remember Teal from a few chapters ago? This is actually just part of her dream. The whole thing was a dream sequence. We have like a nested dream sequence here. And this is to kind of reflect when, I don't know, this happens to me all the time. I'll wake up, quote unquote. I'll wake up in a dream and I'll be doing things, and then I'm pretty sure I even just had this morning, where I was pretty darn certain I woke up and I was doing things in my house, and then weird stuff started happening, and the real me, I sure hope it's the real me, the me right now, anyways, said, "Wait a minute, that's a little too weird, don't you think?" And I woke up properly. Um, that's kind of what we're going for here. We're going for this sentiment of, by the time we get to the end of the dream, anyways, we want readers to clue in, oh, yeah, this is weird. Hey, wait a minute. And then chapter 34 rolls around and it's, oh, yeah, that was still a dream. Okay, crazy. That was still a dream. And that's another reason why I kind of might want to break this book into two and put this one at the end, because if it's two books, then readers might get to the end of this and go, oh, hey, did you just kill Teal? Did you just murder Teal at the end? And that's neither here nor there. We'll talk more about that later. But it's a very cliffhanger ending, right? We don't even talk about at the end of the chapter what really happens to the POV character. It really is just like a terrible Lovecraftian ending. But to fold this whole note in, we need, or I guess we don't need, but I want it to be not apparent from the start, but I want there to be hints right from the get-go that maybe this isn't just so easy. Maybe it isn't just waking up. Maybe there are still aspects of this dream. Even though the POV, which it's like pretty clear, right? It's pretty clear when you get to this chapter that the POV is probably Teal. There's even a spot kind of in the middle where I'm intending on just having an illustration, right? Because the POV character looks at their phone and there's not a good way to write that. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just show what's on their phone. I'll just have a drawing that's on their phone and it'll be very obvious if you just look at their phone, like who they are. Their name is going to be on their phone. Their chat, like who they're texting, is going to be right there with their name, right? And if you've been paying attention to any of the story, their name is going to be right there. And it's going to go, oh, okay, okay, this is who this is supposed to be. This is crazy. Okay, so I guess it's got to be Teal. And we go through this whole day with, air quotes, Teal. And things get more and more weird. And we're like, okay, this I guess is her real life. This is who Teal really is. And then things get weird by the end of chapter 33, and then it just ends. And because of all of that, because we have this ramp up, we just need like a little bit of a gentle incline right at the start. The incline doesn't really start until later on, but I think we can level out that the degree of that incline and have it start right at the beginning, just with a few subtle mentions of, like we mentioned, the room is cold, the furniture's weird. Maybe even when the POV character goes to take a shower, just the washroom is only the shower for some reason. The toilet, the sink, whatever, they're not there. Maybe there's just like a countertop and a mirror. But, little things like that. Maybe when they go to get threshed? They get threshed. Yeah, Teal's a piece of grain. When they go to get dressed, maybe it's just like, oh, they go to the closet and then, like a sim, they just have the fresh clothes on. Little things like that. That last one might be a little on the nose, but you get what I'm saying, right? But that aside, that's kind of the idea. We're trying to build this notion that like, oh, no, that whole dream sequence, don't worry about it. The whole rest of the book, don't worry about it. I was just kidding. It was just a funny joke. It was just a funny haha joke until you keep reading and you get to the end of the chapter and the two-way mirror starts to fall apart. The smoke and mirrors start to fade. And I'm standing there in the middle of like my circus, waving my hands as the circus master going, hey, no, don't look at the circus tent on fire. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Teal's fine. She's an office worker. And then by the time we get to chapter 34, y'all realize, this was never a circus all along. This wasn't a circus and there were no monkeys. How dare you lie to me, silly box person? And I'll run away laughing. Ha ha ha. Probably not. So, as mentioned, they go about their morning. And their morning's pretty typical. Something that happens here is, and it doesn't happen, I think it only happens 2 or 3 times, where they actually speak aloud. A lot like I mentioned, of the chapter is the POV's thoughts. It's a quiet, sonorous chapter. But when they do speak, I'm debating, should it just be in Mandarin? Should it just be in simplified Chinese? Should it just be in whatever, like, because we've had this whole thing about, like, oh yeah, Teal's speaking Elvish, haha. And this would just absolutely be such a kick in the pants of, like, oh no, just another layer of, oh, it was actually just a dream. That's her native language. That's just what she talks. The reason we get her thoughts in English is just because that's what I'm writing in. But no, Teal's just straight up a Chinese person. Teal just lives in Beijing, right? That kind of vibe. Um, just to kind of like tease readers, right? And I don't know, that might be a little insensitive, but um, Robin apparently has never heard anybody say a kick in the pants before, and for that, I'm going to kick them in the pants because they're distracting me. Um, and so this is kind of just building off of that. This green point here is I'm debating, should there be dialogue? Should I go back to the dream logic where all of the dialogue has been removed and we're simply referring to the act of that which was spoken? Um, so instead, right, the POV character here says, I'm heading off, I'm heading out. And instead, we would rewrite that as, you know, while departing, they said their goodbyes to those that remained. Um, just so that there's zero dialogue. Nothing is ever said aloud. Nothing is ever spoken. And I think that might be a little too on the nose. I think it might be a little too strong. But I don't know. Do we thread in the dream logic to maintain that it's a dream, or do, like, hey, it's my book. I can break the book. I can break the book rules when I darn well want. But it's right there. Do I maintain it? I don't know. Would it be the polite thing to do as an author? Oh, it totally would be. But in the chapter where I'm trying to like stuff a rug under the reader's feet so that I can pull it out from under them. Maybe that's not the best thing to do. Maybe I shouldn't be being nice, and I don't really think I am, because if you've read any of the book, I'm not a very nice author. I am kind of being really mean to the main character here. More on that later. We get to some really not nice stuff in a few chapters. Um, and this is because, yeah, we want to keep the reader guessing. And I just ask myself, why? Why do we want to do that? Um, Mostly, yeah, because I want to. I just want to. I think it's more fun. This chapter is very self-indulgent, but it also serves as this weird threshold in the story. Right? We get to the end of this dream sequence, and everything after this is way more depressing. Everything after chapter 33, right? And the dream sequence itself almost serves as a gradation between, okay, chapter 27, Teal was like goal oriented, Teal was kind of going insane. And then we get the dream sequence, which is like peak insanity, right? Because it's a dream. And then chapter 33 tacks itself right on the end and says, okay, we're done being a gradation. Here, it's just the peak of weirdness disguised with a mask of normalcy. It is peak weirdness because it's wearing that mask of normalcy. It's trying to hide itself. It's trying to maintain this facade. I think I peaked the mic, sorry. It's trying to maintain this facade that everything's fine. Everything's okay. The book, up until this point, has just been a total ruse. Don't worry about it. Just keep reading. The rest of the story is going to be fine. After which, after chapter 33, everything gets way more weighty. After this chapter, we spend a lot more time with Teal being introspective. We spend a lot more time with her dwelling on whether or not she really wants to do what she's been trying to accomplish this whole time. And those that she meets, the experience she has, are way more bleak. They're way more intense, and they're pretty hard to understand. We get into some pretty, I don't want to say tough philosophy, but we get into weird stuff regarding faith and metaphysics. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We get into quantum physics a little bit, just a little bit, but also stuff on like, what does it mean to be a hero? Just really weird philosophy. And, that caps off the whole book. So we need chapter 33 to step back to what we're talking about. We need this chapter to exist here, almost to stand as a bridge from the weird gradation of high mania. We've got this bridge of chapter 33 being peak weirdness, very off-putting. And then chapter 34 onward, we can keep going, right? You crossed the bridge, you made it. Great, good job, you did it. Let's keep going. The rest of this book is going to be really sour. You made it this far. Why stop now? And I think at the end of the day, that's why chapter 33 needs to be here. If there was a chapter to be cut from the book, it would be this one, because like I said, it is really self-indulgent. But I when I stop and think about would the book be lesser without it, I always come to the conclusion that yes, it would. I think it needs to kind of be here just because of how I've built the dream sequence. Like, if anything, I don't think just chapter 33 would be removed. I think the whole dream sequence would be removed. But if we remove the whole dream sequence, we're basically removing all of Teal's lore, all of the POV characters' world building, which is like a really big part of what they start to think about going forward. So to work backwards, we need this because we need the rest, and we need the rest because we need that to go forward, right? It's cyclical. All of this just works together like cogs in a machine, and if you take out one of the cogs, the machine's not going to work. So chapter 33's got to stay. All right? Did my argument win you over? I hope so, because we're going to move on. Part of this commute is a bus ride. They head out, they hop on the bus. And as somebody who's rode the bus a lot, this bus ride is really lacking. Where's the stops? Where are the people awkwardly shuffling their bodies? Where's the, people trying to make room? Where's the elder that gets on with their walker that everyone has to like? Nobody groans, no one says everything, but the collective of the bus just makes room for them because they know they have to. There's always somebody, always. Every bus route, doesn't matter where you're going, it's a full bus. Somebody is going to stop the bus driver, half get on the bus before they pay their fare, and ask the bus driver something. Always happens. Always shoehorns 5 minutes into the entire commute without fail. Where's that? None of this happens on this bus ride. And I just want to make the bus ride feel a little bit more believable, so we can crowbar in any of this stuff. Another favorite bus ride aspect. Where's the bus driver stopping for like a 15-minute break in the middle of the route? You ever had that happen? You ever had a bus driver just like take off to a Tim Hortons? They just pop right in. Just, okay, I'm going to stop the bus here and go on break, everyone. Hope you don't mind. Like, okay, you could have told us. You could have told us you're going to be gone for 15 minutes. I could have walked to where I was going. Anyways. Just got to add a little bit more believability into this bus ride. I think on top of it being more fun and more real, it also stitches the chapter into reality, into contemporary reality a little better. I think I'm getting confused with contemplative. Yeah, no, I did mean contemporary. The POV character here, they get on their bus, they head to a train station, and it's while they're at the train station that they buy some things, right? They buy their lunch here, but they also buy some breakfast. And we don't really talk about that. We don't really talk about this little on-the-go meal that they're having. They kind of just eat it, right? If you see here, this last paragraph here that my cursor's over, it's right at the end. They eat a croissant and they had a coffee, right? If this were Teal, and this is where I'm coming from, if this were Teal, Teal would be fantasizing, right? Even Teal would take time to appreciate a train station croissant and a vending machine coffee. Teal would stop and dissect the notes of that meal. Even if it was shitty coffee, even if it was like burnt and acrid, Teal would stop and savor those flavors because Teal's a little, obsessed like that. But I worry that this gives away too much, that this allows readers to know too overtly who the POV character is. And maybe that's not such a big deal. I just spent a whole soliloquy talking about how, oh yeah, we're pretty certain about how that it's Teal by the time we get into it. And like, I don't know, should I really lean into that? Should I just be overt that like, yep, this is probably Teal? Does having a character obsess about food necessarily mean it's Teal? No. Is this just another way of saying it's Teal without saying it's Teal? Yeah, I guess. I guess it kind of is, but I don't know. I don't really have a great answer to this one. If it were Teal, right, Teal would be, like I said, overjoyed to have a cheap meal. She would probably weigh the meal against a luxurious one and still find qualities of like a crappy croissant that she would appreciate, right? Like the warmth, the flaky texture, the airiness, the like tepid temperature on her hands from the coffee. She'd probably appreciate little things about, oh, the coffee uses a paper lid instead of a plastic one. That's a nice change of pace. Maybe she thinks like, oh yeah, it's really nice that that cafe provides sweetener instead of sugar, because I've been trying to watch my sugar intake. I don't know, anything like that. And this goes hand in hand with what we were talking about making this more believable in a contemporary sense. That's things those are things that people worry about. Those are things that people notice. Maybe we can even talk about the way in which Teal physically goes about eating this croissant. I don't know. Anything? Maybe. Like that might be too much. That might be shoehorning in too much. A nice facet of this chapter is that it's brisk. We gloss over a lot of things, but maybe this is somewhere we should pump the brakes. I don't know. I don't have a great answer. What I do know is that I'm going to take a sip of water because I've been talking for 30 minutes. My throat's already hurt. I got to do this for another hour and a half. I'm never going to make it. Let's keep chugging. Okay, so this is a weird aside. While rereading this chapter, I realized that, and I'm just going to say Teal, right? I'm just going to flip-flop between saying Teal and the POV character. But Teal here gets on it was originally a bullet train. I had to kind of like rewrite a little bit this on the fly. And it's definitely going to be rewritten in the future. But Teal originally got on a bullet train meant to resemble a Shinkansen. However, that's not really the style of train that's used in modern day China. China prefers, and they're basically the same technology at the end of the day, but they differ slightly, and it's enough to make mention of. Is Teal technically gets on a maglev, which this is the thing, right? Originally, the way in which the seat is written is that those types of trains are mostly seats. They're mostly densely packed seats. They're essentially planes on rail. I think famously the Shinkansen has 3 seats on each side, or it might be 2 on one and 3 on the other. But they are basically just seats. There's no room for standing. And so like I'm talking here about people standing on the train and yada, yada, yada. And just like things don't add up, things aren't meshing up. There's also the issue of Teal taking a maglev from the outskirts of town to downtown, and that would never really happen, right? Maglevs and bullet trains are meant to cross vast distances quickly. There can be an argument made that, and I'm pretty sure there are some that run, there are bullet trains that run pretty small distances just to get to like downtown Tokyo or downtown Beijing. But in this scenario, I think it would just be a little too much, right? For the most part, these big fast trains are meant to transport a lot of people a pretty big distance very quickly. We're talking about Kyoto to Tokyo in about 3 hours. We're talking about like Shanghai to Beijing, and I think about 6, right? Like under a day. And like you could definitely go on a flight. You could definitely get a flight for quicker and probably more expensive, but they're just more economical. And so that like Teal just taking this train, the POV character taking this train from kind of an outskirtsy city to the big metropolis downtown just doesn't add up. Those things are a little too rare. And it's much more believable that they're taking a very standard electric locomotive that makes more frequent stops. Um, and these trains are fast, right? If you and I did a bunch of research on the you'll see. We'll get to it in a second. I did a bunch of research on JR, which is Japan Rail, Japanese Rail, and because that is what a lot of this would be based off of. Um, so on JR, there are their bullet train lines, but then there's also their standard lines, which are just operated by a different suite, different suites of electric trains. And these go pretty fast. They work really well, but they're definitely not high speed rail. Um, for the sake of the scene, we're looking for something that has a wide central aisle and seating along the windows, probably with handholds, right? Very like, I don't know, for example, there comes to mind the trains you see in Agretzko. Um, and, most anime that takes place in Tokyo where there's a train scene, you've probably kind of seen the kind of vibe I want to go for. Um, we need space for people. We need space for the POV character to sit here because they have a bit of an interaction on the train that's important. So we need to have the train reflect this space, right? And it just so happens that, the distance and the type of train we need is actually a different type. And that type uses a different interior rather than a seat focused high speed rail would. Um, and this is all just to say we really need to keep this idea of this black train, but we just need to change what the black train looks like and kind of is at the end of the day. Um, just because it doesn't work right now, right? The train we're talking about here doesn't have a ton of seats. It has an open interior, kind of a little more like a subway or a metro, and we just need to alter that. We need to alter that so that it fits the scene, so that it fits the commute. Um, Unfortunately, that means I have to basically write out the maglev, but the maglev doesn't need to be here. We can maybe just mention it, right? We can mention that, like, oh yeah, a maglev streaks by or something. But the train's got to change a little bit. And like, not that this matters. I'm sure any normal person probably just reads like, oh, a maglev. Okay, I guess that's what it looks like on the inside. But as a stickler for equality, especially as I've mentioned several times already, that we're trying to build this contemporary reality, we need to make things believable. And so that means I got to change the train. I got to change how it's described from the outside a little bit. And just so that the interior can be reflective of what it should actually be. This last bit is me just saying like, oh, these are the lines. You can look at these lines on the JU line. The E231 series. But for the sake of conversation right now, none of that matters. Those are notes for me later on. Um, Aside from that, yeah, the rest of the scene is really good. Well, we could add a little bit more flavor to the train journey. Um, just to, like I said, make it a little bit more believable. There's no mention of terrible ads everywhere or the little jingle, right? There's always a little jingle and then a robot voice that announces the stops. What's going on there? Why doesn't our POV character see or hear anything? Why don't they make mention of the bodies clumped together or the people having to like maintain their weight? There's always inevitably somebody who kind of trips on a train like this. There's always some jerk who's sitting down on a seat and just taking up 2.5 seats, even though they should only be taking up one. There's always somebody who takes a seat and then puts down a bag and then puts down another bag, and they've taken up 3 seats even though they only need one. Or another classic is person with dog in a bag. That one never gets old. Or somebody who brings on a bike. That one's a classic. The bike shuffle gotta be a top 10 things to enter a speeding locomotive. Thank you for making everything inconvenient for everyone with your bike. Just kidding. That's not really their fault. That's more like the train line's fault. They should have bike accommodation. Thank you. Yes, I will die on this hill. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. This is my hill. I'm gonna die on it. Um, yeah, we just need to touch up the train scene a little bit. As for what actually happens regarding the plot, it's fine. It's all good. I'm pretty sure this is where they start like, or there's other people texting, and there's some things going on. Teal here is just being really judgy, and they have like a little mental monologue here. Um, and then as they go through this, they come to they essentially get off the train, right? They're downtown. They get off the train and they take a subway to their office. And I get that the subway is the least important part. It's so unimportant that I really can't even find it here. I know it's in this section here. Um, right, there's an express subway. Fortunately, all that was required was a short connection via an express subway. That's it, right? Can we talk about the subway a little bit? Can we mention it? Can we like talk about the stuffiness of the station? Again, the terrible ads all over the place, the weird tiled texture, the strange liminal descent one experiences when entering a subway station, because they're always pretty weird and they're all kind of like built haphazardly. I don't know, here where I live anyways, they're always kind of funky. Each station is very unique. There's never like a conformity of design. It's always just kind of like, well, we had to make do because this one had I don't a pipe running through the street and we had to dig around it, right? Um, and we just need to talk about the subway a little more. It's unfortunate that we've been talking about so much about public transit, and then we get to the subway and it's like, yeah, okay, they just hop on a subway. Come on, there's stuff to be built there. You know, where's the dimness? Where are the weird trains? You ever been on a subway? You ever been on a metro? When you stand on a metro, typically they're open, right? As opposed to a train which has closed cars. Subway cars tend to be open and interconnected, so that one might be able to get on the last train, and if so, if they need to, they can walk the length of the subway and find a seat somewhere. At least the few I've been on are like that. And part of that is that when you're standing or sitting in the back of the subway, you can look forward down all of the trains and see the whole mechanism, see the whole train wiggle and wobble and undulate back and forth. And it's such a strange visual experience. Why don't we talk about that there, man? That's such a niche subway enjoyer thing, right? True subway enjoyers would understand. And I'm not talking about the sandwich, right? Those sandwiches they're crappy and they're overpriced. I mean, there was a time when I would have been like a Subway stan, but not anymore. I can't even say I'm a Metro fan because there's a video game series, whatever. Underground trains, they're sick, and we should talk about it a little more. Um, and basically, I'm just saying we should steal the TTC. We should steal the TTC and put it in my book. Next stop, museum station. Doors will open on your left. Or is it just, yeah, it's just the left, isn't it? Uh, Anyways, yeah, moving on. Apparently, I make a Little Witch Academia reference. That's great. Um, so the POV character gets off the subway. They're at work, and they have a little scene here where they go up an elevator. They go to their office, and then they go to a change room. And we don't talk about why. We don't talk about, like, they really just go to this change room because that's where the lockers are, and they put away their things. But we don't mention, like, oh, why don't they get changed at work? Why don't they freshen up? Why don't they bother with the locker room very much? Um, and this is just another moment for us to build this POV character as Teal. Um, it's just a wasted opportunity. There's this whole little scene. We could even have somebody chit chat with them or something. Um, we make no mention, like I have written here. We could just mention that they put on a bolo tie, right? It could be as simple as that. Something very small that just immediately, oh yeah, this might be Teal. This might be the character we were just talking about previously. That might be a really obvious hint, but we can do anything really. A spritz of rose water, something to just embellish the fact that this POV character is maybe a little vain, that they care about their looks, that they want to present themselves properly. Maybe they just adjust their suit. Who knows? Um, but the whole locker room scene is just, it happens. It's there. I don't know why it's there. It should be there because of a purpose. And like I guess it is right now. I'm reading it right now as I speak. And we get some hints here. Yeah, there is rose water. There is a bow tie. They straighten black bangs and get everything in order. Okay. Is that enough? I don't know. Is it maybe already too much? I don't know. But the locker room thing here could be more of a stepping stone. They get to work. We talk about their work, and no part of this is really bad. Um, we kind of just end up, like, once they're at work, we just end up flip flopping between, oh, okay, here are their thoughts, here's what they're doing, here are their thoughts, here's what they're doing. And most of the chapter is just about that, right? Here's something that happens, here's the reflection on that. Just so we can build this character. Because throughout this, we are very subtly trying to twist this braid together. We're trying to make a little knot that, like, yeah, this is probably Teal. And this is her modern life. This is Teal in the real world. Great. Awesome. Super. But, but that's not really important right now. That's just kind of what's going on. What is important, something we do need to fix, is we get to this section about how they actually got this job, why they're working here. And right now it seems a little dour. We need this idea of scoring the role to sound serendipitous, as if they just lucked their way into it. We kind of mention right now that, like, oh, okay, maybe they weren't the most qualified for the role, but we should make that really apparent. We should make it really apparent that this, whoever it is, wasn't terribly qualified but for the role, but won out anyways. They just found their way into the position and ended up, it was a good fit for them because they're naturally charismatic, they're charming, and energetic, right? We just want to do this to subtly hint at, and a lot of these points just come back to, we need to subtly hint at that this is probably Teal. We don't do it nearly enough right now, and I feel it leaves readers wondering, okay, well, who is this? Why do I care about this chapter? Why is it here? I want there to be a through line throughout all of this that says, this is probably Teal, by the way. We're not saying it because I'm being a jerk, but it's probably Teal, and that's why you care. I never outright want to say it. I don't want to give that to the readers, but I want them to come to that conclusion. I want there to be pretty much no doubt, no matter who you are reading this chapter, that, like, yep, that's probably Teal. You don't got to go on a Wikipedia article to have some big-brained linguist tell you. I guess it wouldn't be a linguist. Who's somebody who cares about books? A literaturist? A bookist? A book analyst? I don't know. Somebody who reads books good and talks about them. YouTubers, I guess. You don't have a YouTuber telling you, oh yeah, in chapter 33, it's probably supposed to be Teal. Right? I don't want this to be in the level 3 of some river flowing upward iceberg meme in 5 years. I want it to be pretty obvious. This should be tier 1 on the iceberg. It should still be on the iceberg, but it should be at the top. You know, that stuff that, oh, like, oh yeah, everyone knows that one. Once they're in the office, there is no mention of vocal ambience. And that is a little disheartening, right? If you're in an office, you're thinking, okay, there are other people working here. And I think it would also push the idea that this is kind of a dreamy sequence. It helps us build the POV character as being a little nosy, but oh, I'm just ramming 3s and 0s into my text file here. Yeah, I don't want that. Right, we're trying to build this idea that, okay, maybe they're a little nosy, but they can't, like, we never as readers are told what's going on. We never actually hear what they're eavesdropping on. There's just mentions of conversations about this or that. But it doesn't really matter right now, does it? And then we can move on with the story. It also builds the environment as being more believable. Another check mark in that field of check marks. There's just a field full of check marks, and they're all in bloom. We don't really mention this. We've talked about it. We talk about how at one point the POV character has to reschedule the meeting to 10 a.m. Should we include that? Should we mention it? Not something we really need to, but once again, it does build a more believable story if we circle back around to that 10 a.m. meeting. Even if all we do is just say it was complete, or it happened, or they do something afterwards, right? Like the meeting concludes and then the POV character does blah, blah, blah. It ties itself into the ambience and once again becomes more of a believable point. If we set up this whole thing, oh yes, a meeting needs to be shifted, then we should stitch that back in. We should tie that back in and say, okay, well, yeah, here's that meeting we were talking about. Consistency and believability, I think, are the two main things here. And also teal. And well, there's a lot of things, right? I mean, we got to fix it. We got to fix most chapters. I don't think there's been a single chapter where I've been like, oh, this one's fine. Every chapter needs fixing, and this is how this one needs to be fixed. This last point, this blue point here, is me just saying, oh, maybe the POV character is eavesdropping throughout their trip. That's something we could include. And once again, this builds environment very well. It builds the character really well. I don't know if it's something we really need to include. Once again, I'm butting heads with the me who wants this chapter to be brisk and to leave out details to keep it vague. But on the other hand, I want to build in details that support certain ideas while keeping it vague. So we've got a bit of a balancing act going forward. Whether or not I'll be able to maintain it, that's hard to say. But we do what we got to do. Look over here, folks. Look over here in the middle of the screen. Don't mind me. Don't mind me erasing things. And I mean, I've already botched it, so you probably already know what I'm doing over here. But bump. There we go. Open Office is a thing where if you highlight in black, and it makes total sense. If you highlight in black on Total Office, it automatically changes the text to white. Boop. However, a lot of my files are grandfathered from from Microsoft Word. And so in Microsoft Word, when you highlight a thing in black, it keeps the font black. So I have a lot of these like highlighted black spots that I was supposed to fix, but then didn't because I'm dumb. Oh man, there's still so much. Yeah, we must be at like a middle point here. But sorry, to get back on topic, as we should be, because I'm so focused. I'm so incredibly laser beam focused here right now. We get to this part where, right, and we do have a bit of this ambience. We do have a bit of this like hearing bits of conversation throughout the office. Throughout the office. No B included. I'm sorry. I'm struggling getting this point started because it's kind of confusing. There's this kitchenette in the office, and it ends up being an important space later on in the chapter, in like just a few pages. Given that that's the case, should I expand what it looks like the first time it's mentioned? Should I build it as a space? This could work well given the idea that, yeah, we're still in a dream sequence and we're falling back on this idea that sometimes when you're dreaming there's just weird hyperfixation. And so we could build the space, we could just chalk it up to hyperfixation in a dream, while also building a space that ends up being relevant later on. Um, but once again, I'm torn on, should I keep it vague? Should I just leave it? Should I include more detail? I don't know. This isn't necessarily an aspect of building a more believable space. This is just an aspect of it would serve the story better in a practical sense if I talk about it now, so that later when we come back here, I don't have to explain the scene as much, right? I can build work, I can do work now so that I don't have to do work later. If nothing else, we ought to mention that this is where Tia leaves her lunch, and that's why she comes back here. That's why it is a space, right? It's like a communal, there's a fridge here. This is where people keep their lunches. We should mention Teal stops here to deposit her lunch, probably between when she arrives and departs from the locker room. There's just an issue with their movement here too, right? They go there to grab their lunch and then they leave. It's almost like they just teleport around. This isn't terrible given that this is a dream sequence. It's not the end of the world, but I think we can afford to slow things down a little bit here and have some more nuance to the scene. Add greater clarity by slowing things down and having this POV character move throughout the office. It does serve the office as a greater structure in being more realistic. I don't think that's necessarily needed, but I think as far as allowing the POV character more time to think, to be thoughtful, I think it supports that. We can have them do more little actions, right? We can build them up as being a character through their actions. They can get up, they stretch, they log off their computer, they're taking their work seriously, they gather up some belongings, like they take lunch breaks as a very serious thing. And we might even mention like right 12 o'clock, right on the dot, bam, they're ready. That's their lunch break. And then just like another aspect that the space here just doesn't add up. How do they get to the lunchroom? I mentioned that there's a space devoted in this office building for these employees to eat lunch, but I don't say how they got there. They just get their lunch and then they're there. What? How do they get there? Is there an elevator? We talked about the elevator earlier. Did they take stairs? Once again, we could just chalk it up to dream. But if we are going to if we're going to chalk it up to dream, then we should be overt about that. We should be saying, oh yeah, like and then they went up to the room. How? Don't worry about it. If we're going to start being weird here, we need to ante up. Right now it's just lazy writing. And that's not good. Lazy writing is just always the bane of a good story. A good written story anyways. Just something to consider. If we're going to move the character around in space, then let's do it. But if we're not, then let's give it a reason. Let's be a little more overt that, okay, things are kind of weird. And this can be the first instance of like, yeah, things are kind of weird because maybe we just hard cut to them in the lunchroom. How did they get there? Well, it doesn't really matter. On that note, we can linger. We can take a pause here at the lunch break. They're on break. We can be on break. That's fine. It is a very personal moment of quiet reflection. I've been saying this whole time that the POV character is being very reactive throughout a lot of this. A thing happens, they react to it. They're thinking, a thing happens, right? They are part of the world. This is the only part in this chapter where they stop and they're just with their thoughts. Um, which like we need this little scene. I think it's really important. And I think going forward we can expand upon this. We can give their thoughts more weight, more importance by just dwelling on them for a little while longer. Um, these I'm making fun of myself here in my notes. Sorry, that's why I had to pause. Uh, there's just like I should do a better job explaining and exemplifying how it feels to eat lunch on your own, especially in a public space. There's this weird lonely levity to eating lunch by yourself in a public space. You know, these spaces are essentially designed for groups, and to be a solo individual who's taking up space, who is just observing, who is being quiet, who isn't talking, not adding to any ambience or noise. You've just specifically gone here to consume and exist. There's this very strange presence to that. You really are just existing in that space, eating, probably. Um, and so, in spite of that, there should probably be some people watching here. The POV character should be looking around. They should be observing things and maybe not interacting with them, but existing in the same space as them. Maybe there's a TV on. Maybe they hear a conversation. Maybe they look out the window and witness a car crash or something. Probably something not that grand, but stuff like that, where we can ground this scene, we can ground their thoughts, we can ground their observations by putting them in space and having them exist in this lonely environment, where like it's lonely, but there's other people here. That's probably the weirdest part about eating lunch alone in a public space, is that yeah, you're just there eating, but 90%, 95%, maybe even 99% of all the other living beings here right now are either working together, eating together, or just like existing together. But you, as the loner eating lunch, whatever, man, you're just vibing. Or in another sense, right? Because sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes it's just a collection of loners all sitting, being lonely and eating because none of them want to interact. And if that's the case, sure, we can talk about that, but we should talk about something. Um, yeah, this last point basically just says the same thing. There should be more people watching. And this goes hand in hand with what we were saying earlier about the POV character subtly being really nosy. Um, I think this is one of the first instances where no, this is one of many instances. It says another headache here, so that means I've done this gag before. I already did this once, but in reference to these reoccurring headaches, I like the idea that whenever the POV character, whenever Teal starts thinking about this significant other, this other individual in their life who has definitely gone unnamed, um, they start to get a headache. And this is pretty tropey, but I don't know. I don't know. Like, I like it. I think it's a great way to suggest that there's more on Teal's mind than we're letting out, letting through. How's that expression go? I don't know. Then we're letting on. There we go. I got it. It took me a couple tries. Um, there's this also, I had an idea that maybe instead of these headaches, it's just that the POV character kind of acts out, right? And I'm sure you've been in this situation where you have an uncomfortable thought. Maybe you're embarrassed by something, maybe something from your past just it slaps you over the face. And instead of dwelling on it, you just get up and go to the washroom. You get up and have a snack. You just walk around a little bit. Maybe you just twitch. Maybe you look something up spontaneous. Maybe you check your phone, anything, right? Anything to take your mind off of that thought. And we could probably have the POV character here do something like that, as if they're forcing themselves to think about something else. Anything will do as long as it's not that thought. And they don't really know why they're doing this. Maybe it's to avoid the headache. But on a subconscious level, we as readers, well, I mean, like Teal, also the POV character, is doing this on a subconscious level, but we as readers on a subconscious level kind of know, oh, something's up here. Something's strange. What's strange? We don't really have all the information to know, but we have enough to take a really good guess at it, especially after getting through that dream sequence. If you get through the dream sequence and take away enough of it that you go, I'm not certain that that is all of a dream. I'm not sure that this is all just a hazy, sleepy time, funny mania session. I think some of this might be memories. I think some of this might be like Teal recalling things. And even Teal, right? By the end of the dream sequence, Teal's like, I don't know. Was that real? I don't know. I'm pretty wigged out right now. But we as readers can build on that more substantially because we are rational beings who aren't fictional characters. And we can empathize with Teal. We can empathize with them trying to block out these thoughts. But we don't have the answers of why. We know something's bothering them, but why? We know it's in relation to somebody they had a dream about a few chapters ago, but why? Why is this all happening? Well, maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe it'll, like, we better keep reading to find out, right? And that's a big thing here is, we better keep reading to find out. And this kind of just goes hand in hand with this, right? As the chapter proceeds, these thoughts should become more wistful. I think Teal's reaction to them should be constant, that they just like, they don't have the mental resources to cope with this right now. They're at work. They're struggling with certain aspects of their life. There's more than just this issue going on. And as an instinct, they just go, okay, well, we're not going to think about that anymore. I gotta call my boss. I gotta answer this email. I have to go to the washroom. Right? They even though their thoughts are getting more and more pressing, they are just shutting down, kind of. Their response to them is maybe not right now. Maybe now isn't the best time. Maybe I don't really want to be thinking about blank. And we could just put the POV character in more situations. We can have them in a daze. We can have them thinking. We can have them meandering and kind of just, right? And they almost kind of start doing this. There's a point where they just start watering the plants in the office because they think, oh, I just kind of want to waste time. We can tie these two together. We can marry these two ideas and say, okay, well, why are they just wasting time? What's on their mind that they don't want to deal with right now? Maybe something really depressing that we'll talk about in a few chapters. And then so we come upon this point where the POV character is cut off by a companion, not quite a companion, but like a coworker. And they start talking, and this could just be a good segue, right? We can have this section following the lunch where they've had their lunch, they've had these weird romantic thoughts, they're feeling uneasy, like something's stirring within them, that something's starting to bother them, and these headaches are starting to get to them, and they're not sure if maybe it's just headaches, maybe they're just stressed, maybe the world is ending, I don't know. But we can incorporate these two ideas where they find themselves getting more and more wistful, kind of just spacing out, being dazed, and then it's this coworker that kind of hauls them back into reality. We can even just subtly hint at, we can have the POV character say something along the lines of, oh yeah, sorry, I was trying to remember something really important, but it just won't come to me. And kind of, in the same vein as when somebody asks how you are and you say, I'm fine, even though you're having the worst day of your life, we can kind of paint it like that. A much more believable and nuanced situation where this coworker is asking like, hey, you look pretty spaced out, haha. And Teal just goes, oh yeah, I was trying to remember something. Sorry. I hope I didn't bother you or anything. To just deflect, right? And it's pretty much just what it boils down to. The POV character in the scene is just trying to deflect in any way they can, even through social situations where they're pretty overtly confronted with the idea of like, hey, something is clearly bothering you. How do you respond? Oh, haha, I'm fine. right? You just shut it down. You just kick it out. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. Speaking of this conversation, it's a little flat. It should be more active. It should be more conversational. Especially Teal in this instance, the POV character should have more energy, right? As the female secretary, and I hate having to write this, but it's another facet of making the world a little believable. Is Teal as this female secretary is meant to be sprightly. She's expected to have energy, to be chatty, to be easy to talk to and approachable. She, as the secretary of this office, is meant to be like the individual who workers can go and just chat to and be friendly and talk about the weather. Did you see the game last night? Right? Anything at all. It's and it's an aspect of worst place. I mean, yeah, it is the worst place. It's an aspect of workplace sexism that I'm basically just taking this opportunity to point a finger at and go, hey, isn't that messed up? I can't fix it though, so let's just move on. That's not what the story's about, unfortunately, but let's just move on. That exists in the real world and it's terrible and bad and it probably shouldn't. Let's just move on. Why are traditionally female secretaries expected to be exploited for their emotional labor? I don't know, probably because the patriarchy or something. Who knows, right? It definitely is that, actually. Anyways, late stage capitalism too. I'm going to stop this train of thought before I get on a tangent. But yeah, we just need to rewrite this conversation to have Teal effect and have her slot into that role, even though she doesn't want to, right? We can even like take an aside and have her think between phrases here and just think like, God, I don't want to talk to you right now. Like, oh, what did you just look at my hips? Little things like that. Are you looking at my legs? My eyes are up here, you disgusting pervert of a human being. And that's another thing. Are these humans? Are they half elves? I don't know. We never talk about that. That's probably for the best. What else have we got here? So we get to the spot, right? And this has happened maybe two or three times already, where we get little internal monologues. We get these paragraphs where it's nothing but thoughts. And I, for one, am terribly well versed in spiraling. It's super easy. It's one of my many skills. One of my few skills. It just happens a lot, so I feel like it's a many. Anyways, I'm really good at it. I'm really good at just sitting and thinking and letting my thoughts take over my life. And this paragraph here, this one's really on the nose, and I like it. It's really depressing, and it's really depressing because the last sentence is, "I'll throw my life away and write a book." And if there's anything in my life that could be more depressing, it's me writing that line. I write that line, everyone. Hey, I put those words there. I hate myself. And that's allowed. Yeah, I can do it. It's my book. I do whatever I want. I like that it's a nice little fourth wall tap. I think it's funny. We don't break the fourth wall, but these thoughts definitely sing about something that's beyond the book, and that something is me. I'm right here. And they're singing because I'm right here and I put them there, right? Very like hyper real commentary there. But that's just me saying I want to keep that because it's funny. Um, Following this, I think they have you're right, they're doing this in the toilet, which is even funnier. They take a bathroom break and then they're just thinking all of this hubgub on the toilet, and that's just delightful. What better place to have a depressing thought spiral than in the washroom at your corporate office? I definitely have never done that before. I definitely haven't cemented my lack of will to live in a company washroom in my time. Um, so we have a point here where they get back to work, and we mentioned earlier that they had started payroll, but we didn't really talk about in what capacity. We didn't mention any detail. Um, we don't mention it being stopped, we should really double back, right? Because they come to a point where they're like, I'll finish payroll, and that's good and that's fine, but we didn't talk about why it stopped earlier. We didn't talk about what happened that made the POV character switch tasks. And if we're chalking that up to ADD, then great, that's fine. That's very believable. We should mention that though. Um, we should mention that something drew them from their work. Um, whether it be an outside source or an internal one, it doesn't matter. We should mention it. Ah, hey, a thing. Ah, what? Payroll cannot be finished. Anything will do. Anything at all. Um, so here's an errant thought. Here's a weird thought. If this is supposed to be teal, are they wearing gloves? Are they wearing gloves at work? Would that be weird? If they are wearing gloves, that's way too teal, right? We spent a lot of this book talking about how teal is touch averse and wears gloves and always has their body covered. Um, and like it should be, right? If readers have been active, if they've been paying attention, if this is an inclusion, it should be really on the nose. But I think it might be too on the nose. There's nothing saying a secretary can't wear gloves. It is just a weird thing. It is just a weird thing for any person to do, right? Think about all the people you've ever met in your life. How many of them are just wearing gloves all the time? It's pretty common in fiction for somebody to be wearing gloves all the time, but in the real world, especially out of season, even in season, right? Even if it's cold, most people take their gloves off when they go inside. Um, Nurses, right? Even nurses don't wear gloves all the time. And when they do, it's very specific gloves for very specific tasks. Custodians for very specific reasons. Food workers, right? In an environment like this, wearing gloves is just kind of weird. And it's a very telling sign that it's teal. And this is me just waffling again. I don't know. Is that too much? Is that too overt? Probably. Why would real world teal want to wear gloves all the time? I don't know. Maybe we bring it up. Maybe they are wearing gloves and we bring it up. Maybe it's like maybe we touch on it. Maybe we be a little more overt that like, yeah, it's probably an autism thing. It's probably an on the spectrum thing. Maybe that's teal when they're thinking about why they got the position. Maybe they think about that. Maybe they're like, oh, maybe they think I'm on the spectrum. Like, oh, geez, was I a diversity hire? Oh, geez, am I the DEI here? Oh, geez, that's kind of crazy. And like maybe that is the case. I don't know. That would be a very real thing for them to consider. Once again, very overt. It's like that train of thought, that scenario is just, it's teal painted, it's teal coated, 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 not coded, but like either works. Just kidding, I did that on purpose. Um, this is me just saying, yeah, we could bring it up while they tend to the plants. They could like rub the leaves with their gloves to dust them, right? If you're wearing gloves, I don't know, even if I'm not wearing gloves, often I tend to just dust my plants with my hands. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's a thing I don't have an answer for right now. I don't know if Teal should be wearing gloves like she always does. She doesn't need to, right? This is kind of like an altered reality. So it doesn't need to line up one for one, but it could, right? This could be a definite indicator. This could be a huge thing, like the big red flag as we get towards the culmination of the chapter that like, yeah, this is most definitely Teal. This POV character we've been talking about, that we've been coy about, is wearing gloves all the time. They are very touch averse. They're kind of a weirdo, and that's all right. That's okay. We love them. But to move on, um, we end up back in the break room, back in the kitchenette. And as mentioned, we should take this time to, there they watered the plants. Here's the bake room. The bake room. Bake room. I wish I had a dedicated bake room. But we should take some time to establish this area earlier. Um, And this is me just saying, yeah, we should take this time while we're talking about the room and bump it up. This beat should be used to set the scene, to set the atmosphere, rather than wasting all this time trying to do that while also describing the setting. In doing that, I think it serves both. We're giving both ideas their own due diligence. We're talking about the break room earlier, and we're foreshadowing. Okay, this is probably going to be an important setting later on because we're talking about it. We talk about how nice the woodwork is, what the cabinets look like, what it's stuffed with. Maybe there's like a small table there. Maybe there's some paintings in there. We can talk about what the fridge looks like. Anything. We can talk about what's stocked in there. Maybe the POV character stops and checks some things. Maybe that's part of their job function, is like making sure the kitchenette is stocked with teas and coffees and sugar and yada yada yada. But we can do that earlier. And then when we get to the now part, which is supposed to be we're ramping up on the weirdness, we can actually do that. We can focus in on that and say, yeah, things are getting weird. Here's what the lighting is like. Here's what the air feels like. Because that's a big part of the scene that's missing. We don't talk really about what the atmosphere is doing. We mention it, right? We talk about the lights. We talk about how it's getting kind of chilly, but we really need to be building this horrific scene with grains of sand, right? We're going to build a mountain out of grains of sand. So we've got to start small. And that's because we need to slowly build the tension. We're slowly transitioning from, okay, believable dream sequence, into, I think this is really messed up. Where did you come from, Lovecraft? I didn't expect to see you here. And so I think we need to do this, where we need to break apart talking about the room and talking about the atmosphere into two separate parts. A big thing we fail to mention is how there's silence, about how the ambience has faded away. Right? And we can even, this would be a great spot to incorporate the POV character's senses. We can talk about what they feel, what they hear, what they see, what they smell. And I think something that I've read recently, I think something really importantly, what they don't smell. I think having that, and I know that's kind of weird, but it would add a layer of, that's pretty messed up, to this sequence if they took a minute and they were just like, it doesn't smell like anything in here. Wait a minute, why did I think that? And then just having like a jolt of anxiety of like, oh, like, yeah, no, it doesn't smell like anything in here. Wait a minute. Where's the break room smell? Where's the like scent of musty cabinets and, half eaten, thrown out meals? And like the cheap air freshener used to mask it all, right? Where did that smell go? Hold on a minute. It smells like nothing. Uh-oh. Right? Maybe we can even use that before we launch into the high weirdness that ends this chapter. But to move forward and talk about said high weirdness, I'm going to take a little drink, so give me a second. It's been an hour and a half. Can you believe that? We're getting close to the end. So we get into this room, and the POV character has come in here to make a tea, kind of at the end of the day, just like, oh, I need something to do to kind of maybe calm my nerves, but also just waste time. And they start the kettle, they fill it up, they fill up this kettle, and they start it. And I love that this is the beat in which we use to say that there's no more sound. I think we do it a little too quickly. I think we do, we like skip by what that means a little too fast. We need to add some nuance to this. I love the fact that the kettle just suddenly starts to fill the room, but we don't incorporate this into the mountain making that I was talking about prior. This should absolutely be the way in which we transition from this idea into the next. However, we need to further establish that there's this disconnect between the silence and what existed previously. The kettle is the bridge between those two ideas. However, we need to mention that there is this fading out, or rather the noticing of the lack of ambience and the retention, the grasping at the realization that, oh yeah, hold on, this is quiet. What happened to the noise? Um, because we're supposed to be there. We're supposed to be there with the POV character, and this should dawn on us as much as it should dawn on them. We should be present with them as they notice, oh, wait a minute, all I hear is the kettle. Did everyone leave? Like, wait, that's kind of strange. There's not even the hum of the fluorescence above, right? And they can be noticing these various aspects of their burgeoning situation, of this foul. It's not really like a miasma, I guess. Yeah, it's like an ambient miasma that's forming around them. There's this fun idea I had that maybe, because part of what's going on is that the POV character Teal here is in a trance. And I really like the idea that they maybe notice a moth on the cupboards and they just end up staring at it. Just thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. And this can just be another little drop of weird, like, oh, that's kind of strange. How did a moth get way up here? And this would be, in between the kettle and the silence, this would be the perfect little stepping stone of them just having this errant thought of, oh, that's a cute little moth. I wonder how it got all the way up here. And then bam, that thought existing as a bubble almost pops. And they start to realize, hold on, the kettle's really loud and there's no other sound. And wait a minute, there's no smell. Why is it getting colder, right? These little things can build and build and build until stuff starts getting really strange. I really like this idea of bringing the moth back, right? If the imagery here isn't just slapping everyone in the face, isn't just, flipping the bird to everyone, so to speak. It should be. This is as blatant as it gets that, like, yeah, the moth is going to help Teal wake up, right? And I just really like that idea that we can use this moth to help Teal in a couple beats. We're doing this, right, to just foreshadow that, yeah, Lacrimosa is probably more of a major aspect of Teal's life than we've been letting on, right? And we've been trying to, throughout the book, build Lacrimosa as more of an important character. And this is kind of this is the moment in which Teal's subconscious is trying to reflect that. They're trying to say, yeah, you are thinking about the moth. The moth is important to you. Here it is in your dream, dum-dum. The moth is a good friend. It helped in the dream because it helped in real life. And maybe you should stop keeping them in a glass prison. Maybe you should let them out. It's the manifestation, the dream manifestation of Teal's guilt. So yeah, there should be a moth here, and I think that would be great. There's a line here that I say, because essentially what happens is when things go silent, things get really creepy, and Teal's boss shows up. And they're kind of just standing in the doorway menacingly, and they look kind of like they're dead. They look as though they've been dead, right? As if they're kind of, the rigor mortis has set in, and they seem to be this husk of a being rather than a living being. And there's a line here that ends with, it was clear that it was the accounting manager, as in it was Teal's boss. But I don't talk about how. Quite likely it's just their outfit. But we spend no time earlier on in the chapter talking about what the boss looks like. We should, and this is an easy fix, we just need to talk about, like, okay, maybe there's a scene in which the boss enters. Maybe Teal even just notices what they're wearing during their meeting. Maybe they always wear really flamboyant ties, or maybe they've got on a bright blue jacket, whereas the rest of the accounting department doesn't wear blazers, right? Something to just let us know that the boss is different, that they're a little bit more of a character without necessarily giving them a name and a backstory, just a little physical component that we can poke at, that we can point at, especially here, and say, yeah, that's probably the boss. They've still got that tie on. How does Teal know it's the boss? Well, they've got that tie on, right? And I think the tie is coming to me because there's this point in which they clasp the tie and they pull it off, and we can just mention it. We can just mention it in that scene and say, yeah, they grabbed the floral tie. They grabbed their bright pink floral tie and pull it off and yank it off. Anything, right? Maybe they do just toss off their blazer. I don't know. We can do this in a number of ways, but we just need to know that it is the boss for certain, rather than just being told, oh yeah, it was clear it was the boss. Okay, thank you. Thanks for saying that. Why? Why was it clear that it was the boss? So it ends up that the boss, it transforms into this really gross monster, right? Part of why they pull their tie off is because their head falls off and a big, disgusting snake abomination sprouts out of their torso. Very Dark Souls, very Sekiro. Fight me, I'm stealing your ideas. Maybe not. Maybe not like... No, yeah, that wasn't Dark Souls 3. That was very Dark Souls 3. The like weird shadow people. I totally forget. I never beat Dark Souls 3. It was too hard. It was too... Never mind. I don't want to talk about how much I hate Dark Souls 3. Not now. I'll talk about that in a different stream. If we ever do a Let's Play Dark Souls 3, I'll talk about it then. But the description of the boss, right? The boss transitioning into this monster, I like that they remove their tie, but we get very little sense of Teal's fear and panic throughout this situation. And she should really bounce between the two, right? We get a good notion of what they're speaking, right? They feel this compassion, like, oh, I'm concerned, but we never get a sense of that they want to run, that they're scared, that their blood is running cold, that they're like, I want to get out of here. And frankly, they should shift between the two, right? They should shift between, I'm scared, I should say, and I'm scared, I want to go. That should be the crux of the tension here. Like I said, the boss's head falls off, and it doesn't happen suddenly enough. It should almost be something that starts a paragraph. This whole act, the whole beat of the boss's head falling off should be a grotesque punctuation to this entire scene. It should be what ends the possibility of this maybe being a normal thing, and transitions it into, hey, hi everyone, there's body horror. Hello. There's Lovecraftian cosmic body horror. I hope you were ready to have a bad time. Here it is. I mean, not that we didn't talk about body horror earlier, but it was very clearly a dream sequence. We're getting this now where it's like, kind of reality. And the head falling off is the determining factor of, hey, hi, I don't think this is reality anymore. I hope you've been paying attention. This is probably like the last few pages of this chapter here. So I hope you're ready for more questions than you had answers. To press on, though, we really need to emphasize how Teal is feeling really cold here, right? We mentioned how the building of the atmosphere is really important. Teal reacting to that is just as important. We mentioned that, okay, she like sees her breath, and that's great, but she should be trembling. She should be shivering. She should be, her fingers should be shaking as if she's frostbitten. We should be kind of unsure if they're shaking out of fear or shaking because it's cold. And just in general, we get a very poor sense of how Teal is feeling, how they're reacting. They say things, we say they're scared, but their actions don't line up with their feeling or what they're saying. Especially in regard to this knife, right? They end up grabbing a knife from the sink to defend themselves against this monster that showed up. And they're not trembling, they're not struggling to hold their knife, they're not kind of, they never go between this transition of, I'm confused and scared, and, oh, this thing might kill me and I'm terrified, right? It just ends up like, oh no, they're scared and they're holding a knife. Get away from me, you wretched beast. right? And that's stupid. That's dumb. We're building fear and hysteria here. We want there to be uh, horror, really true horror here, terror on all levels. Just like, I might die. There is a thing here and it has blocked me from escaping, and it's big and has razors for teeth. And it's talking to me in a strange, hideous tongue, and it birthed itself from the corpse of my superior. Ah! And like, if this isn't an anecdote for, or sorry, an allegory, if this is an allegory for capitalism, I don't know what is. Your superiors are going to come eat you, everyone. Don't think they won't. They are out for the money. They don't care about you. Stay strong. Stay strong. Unionize, everyone. Go get a union. Go collaborate. I should be saying like a slogan, but I'm dumb. Anyways, yeah, to surmise, Teal doesn't really act very well here. They don't express fear very well, and that's really unfortunate because as our POV character, as somebody we're leaning on to guide us through this scene, we need her to feel scared. We need them to feel scared so that we feel scared. Right? We got to do the empathy thing because that's the only thing we got going for us right now. We're leaning on empathy. Right? And so if our POV is trembling and shaking and quaking, then we too are going to understand, this is scary and bad and deadly. I don't like that. Scary and bad and deadly, 3 worst things. So the nightmare does end up speaking. However, the beat between it appearing and it starting to speak is just too quick. Once again, we don't give Teal any time to react or express. And like I just said, that's a big shortfall for our POV character who we are linked to integrally. We need to build up these emotions. I'm just beating on the same drum at this point. We need to build up these emotions, these reactions. We just need to slow things down here. The head falling, the monster appearing, Teal's reaction, their sensations are all deserving of content here. These are all super important aspects, and right now they're all kind of just clumped together and glossed over. None of them get the chance to ring out, and that's unfortunate. All of them suffer because of this. So we just need to slow this entire sequence down to really build each beat as its own measure. This is in conjunction with my previous idea. After the nightmare here speaks, this would be a great spot for the moth to come back. Teal can just see it on a wall, like it just flutters across her vision and lands on a wall nearby as if it's kind of like trying to support her. And it's, this should almost be another thing that we're just glossing over. The moth's here. Oh, it landed on the wall behind Teal, right? Like it just flutters by her and lands on the wall. But it's just important that we make mention that in this moment, it is the moth, right? It is this weird support from an insect that lends Teal the courage to press on. She snapped out of her fear. We're doing some weird, like, and I kind of hate when authors do this, but we're doing it anyway. We're doing some weird imagery here by having this moth fly by Teal and land near her. We're putting it in a position where it's as if wanting to be defended by Teal, but also trying to support her, right? This whole moth thing is just such like a little addition that it really doesn't matter, and me even mentioning it here on stream feels a little silly, but I think it's just going to add a garnish to the top of this sand mountain. The sand mountain garnish, yum. It's going to add an additional top layer of decoration that's going to help this choir, right, to harken back to the singing, where this is going to be an additional little voice. Maybe this is the soprano that's needed to harmonize with the rest of the choir. It's not big, it's not a great addition, but just including this little moth as a nod to Lacrimosa uh, spins together a much tighter yarn than what exists presently. Um, we don't mention anything about how suffocating the nightmare is, and that's not good. Um, it should almost both have a pressure to its presence, but also just take up a lot of space, right? They're in this tiny little kitchenette, this sprawling, spiraling eel abomination should be almost like pressing down on Teal, like it's just taking up all of the reasonable physical space of this kitchenette as it like readies to loom over her and probably devour her. Um, and we just don't talk about that. We just don't talk about that. This is just another aspect of slowing things down, though. So I've already made my piece on that, and I don't think there's any more to say there. Um, Likewise, the eyeballs that appear on the monster should be more of a disgusting affair. And yeah, this is me just writing the order of operations. There should be this room filling revulsion. There should be the eyeballs that appear on the monster, the malice it presents, right? This is the pressure I'm talking about. And then its poem, right? Because it has this poem. We end this chapter with a poem here. It speaks this poem to Teal as she's standing there in a frightened state, and then it lunges at her, and that's right where the chapter ends. We end on this cliffhanger of cliffhangers where we know Teal's been assaulted. We know they're maybe in a weird dream, but maybe not. We actually don't know what to think, but then what happens next? I don't know. You'll have to just keep reading. It's pretty obvious from here what happens next, right? There's a whole nother chapter right there. You can even read it in real time. Hi, it's right there. Hi, chapter 34. How are you doing? We'll talk about you next week. But for the time being, it's imperative that we build up this scene, that we have these beats in this order, and arrange them like so that the climax of this chapter is as strong as it can be. Now there's an asterisk here, and I don't know why, because I've not included an asterisk anywhere else. So quite likely I was going to add more on that note, but I just didn't. So yippee, hooray for us, we don't have to talk more about a thing. Oh no, there it is. Shoot, I found it. Okay, so this is me saying we need to add a little bit more at the end here. And we want to shift this order because we're going to add a little beat. We're going to add a little thing here before the beast lunges. And we're going to incorporate the moth once more and suggest that it almost leaps off the wall, that it tries to antagonize the monster and halt its advance on Teal. Did I spell imperceivable wrong? Imperceivable? Perceivable. Oh, it's just not a word. I think that's wrong. I'm pretty sure imperceivable is a word. Anyways, whatever. We want to incorporate the little moth, and it should kind of leap out towards the monster and start to glow. We're trying to maybe even blur the lines between reality and the dream by suggesting, no, this is just Lacrimosa. Lacrimosa is just in the dream. Whether or not Teal's actually dreaming, whether or not this is a dream, whether or not this is reality and the rest was a dream, maybe Lacrimosa is the through line. We're just trying to add another aspect of unreality to all of this. On a more delicate note, on a more picturesque note, something you would write about in like an English essay, we're trying to suggest that the moth is representative of Teal's desire to live, that it is suggesting to Teal in this sequence, whether it's reality or not, that she should fight back, that she needs to move forward, that she's backed herself into a wall, but she is the only one who can fight this thing and move on. And it's only after Teal sees this glowing moth that tries to protect her, maybe, that she steels herself, that she readies herself. There's this vague illusion that, like, okay, they brandished the knife. Okay, great. Brandish? Really? You're just going to brandish the knife? You're just going to wiggle it back and forth? Okay, yeah, that's going to stop the monster. We need to kind of rewrite this to be, no, Teal sees this moth. There's this moth, jumps off the wall, tries to protect Teal. I don't know, maybe the beast just like swats it away, or maybe it's just part of the lunge, right? Like maybe it doesn't even deter the beast at all. Um, but Teal should be, instead of just like brandishing, there should be an active motivation that they are going to protect themselves and maybe the moth, if the moth is even real. I don't know. I don't know at this point. Um, as if they're finding inspiration from the silly bug. We should still end on a cliffhanger, but there should be, this scene should be a lot more harrowing. I don't really know. I don't have a great answer for how, but what I want is something that portrays a visual. And the visual I want to achieve is one that suggests that the knife that's being held meets this abomination almost in the exact same moment that their fangs make contact with Teal's arms. Or, Teal at large, whatever, different part of her. Just so that there's this extra layer of confusion, that it's very possible, very plausible that, who's going to win? Are they going to get stabbed, or is Teal going to get ripped apart? I don't know. You'll have to tune in next time, but for the time being, ooh, spooky, scary tension, right? And that's how we want to leave it. We want to leave it on the most tense note possible. So, okay, yeah, that's basically it. That's basically the entire chapter. The end of my notes here is also where I'm going to end the video. We're going to circle back to this poem that I want to talk about a little bit, and I'm just kind of going to glaze myself. I hope you don't mind. Sometimes I write poems that are good, and that'll happen when you're an idiot like me and you just throw everything against the wall. Sometimes it sticks. But that's chapter 33. It's a big mess. There's a lot we really have to do to establish a through line throughout the entirety of the chapter. And a lot of it has to do with building more of a reality, building more of a believable space. In doing that, I think we can build this POV character as one that is at once more believably Teal, and also more likely to be accepted as Teal by readers. And those 2 points are basically the same thing, but there is a subtle distinction. And the one is I'm trying to build Teal as a character in this environment, and the other one is me saying I want readers to read this and think, oh, okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Teal. I'm trying to build Teal further as a character throughout this sequence that maybe doesn't exist, while also trying to be a little more overt, while never outright saying that, yeah, this is probably Teal. We have to fix a lot in the office. Some things just don't make sense. We have to figure out whether or not we want to maintain this juggling routine with, it's a dream, oh, it's not. And I think more importantly, we need to double down on making this last sequence. Oh, okay. Hi, Jay. Thanks for coming. Making this last sequence more terrifying, more harrowing, more oppressive, more dark, more dreary. Any word you can use to make it more of a horror scene, I think, is what we need to do to it. A lot of that has to do with the pacing right now. I don't think like any aspect of what I've included is bad. I think there just needs to be more, and we need to adjust the tempo of the scene. The big change here is that we want to throw in this little moth. We want to add a moth for imagery, and also just plot at large. Is the moth there? Is it really Lacrimosa? I don't know. Doesn't really matter, but we should have this moth to add another aspect of consideration into this sequence. Does it represent something? Is Lacrimosa real? Is Lacrimosa there? What do they mean to Teal? What is Teal thinking here on a subconscious level? What does the moth represent on a bigger psychological aspect? Reading. I keep using the word aspect. I'm trying not to. Um, I think if we do all those things, chapter 33 is going to be a great addition. I think if we fix it up, there won't be any doubt in my mind that it needs to stay. Um, and that's it. That's basically all we got. I'm gonna talk about the poem here a little bit, and then we're going to wrap things up. And we're on schedule for a 2 hour episode for once. That's bonkers. Um, so the thing with this poem, right? The thing with this poem is that, and this harkens back. It'll make sense as I talk. This harkens back to why I want to include the moth. And in fact, why the moth is called Lacrimosa to begin with. And this is deep lore, and like Robin's the only one getting this in real time, but anybody who watches this, I guess, will appreciate it if they're as big of a nerd as I am. But the poem here is a reimagining of a line from Verdi's Requiem. Verdi is or was, probably still is, probably is the world's most influential opera composer. I'm just going to come out and say it. Verdi basically is responsible for opera being a thing still to this day. Verdi's kind of a big deal. So Verdi wrote this really influential Requiem. And in this segment, one of my favorite segments, titled Lacrimosa, this is one of the last lines. And I forget the line in the original, but essentially it confers that one should relinquish themselves to God so that one may rest in peace. So that the Lord, right? So that Jesus the Lord will keep watch over their soul and take it to heaven. And in that, I have my attempt here is to completely bastardize the meaning while using the same words. And I think I achieve it. I don't know. This was one of the poems I put a lot of thought into. And in this moment, we're having this line that is itself a poem, right? It's kind of a song, and it's spoken to the POV character via this nightmare. And I'm not trying to take stabs at the church or anything, not here anyways, but through this twisting of this operatic hymn, we're combining so many moving parts here that have been kind of separate throughout the book, and we're combining them, right? All of these things regarding Lacrimosa. Why are they named Lacrimosa? Well, if you look to the dumb poem in chapter 33, and you read into it way too much, it's actually because it's like so many steps removed. They're actually named after one of Verdi's least important parts of one of their most famous requiems, right? Lacrimosa, I think, only lasts like a minute. It's such a small part, and it is really just like a tearful, sorrowful lament of the human soul. And hey, bum, if you haven't gathered it, that's basically what the whole book is about. And that's why I want the moth here. That's why I want the moth here, is because this whole bit comes from Lacrimosa. This is basically a twisted version of it. And if we have Lacrimosa, quote unquote, in this scene, everything is tied together. Everything gets tied together with a nice little bow. And not only do we push the narrative, we further the references and the I can't think of another word for it, the imagery the emotional impact, the subversive elements that are subliminal in their presentation. Um, I think it just strengthens everything. If we have Lacrimosa in this scene, on a subsurface level, hey, we've got all this crazy world building, we've got all this crazy lore regarding Lacrimosa, and this is where it all gets tied together. But on a layer above that, we're saying, okay, what is Teal fighting for? What is Lacrimosa represent? What is the thing that Teal should be combating these worries, right? Because that's really what this nightmare is, kind of just a manifestation of her anxiety and her fears and her loathing and her inability to move on with her life, right? And maybe more than that, maybe her inability to move on with something more pressing. Um, but here's this moth. And what does the moth represent? I don't know. You can read into it however you want. Maybe it is like the will to live. Maybe it's something a little more sadder than that. Maybe it's coming to terms with something that is hard to digest. Maybe it's letting go of something important. Maybe it's clinging to something important despite it all. You can read into it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, I think there should be this moth in here, the whole Lacrimosa bit. I really love this poem. I don't think I'm going to touch this poem at all. Um, and that's that, everyone. Thanks for letting me chat about a poem that I wrote for 6 minutes. Thank you. It's been great. I hope you had fun. That was the deep lore at the end of the video. That's your little bonus. Hey, if you made it to the end of this 3 hour long podcast video, you get some deep lore. Um, Thanks for coming out, everyone. This stream's really just gonna end all of a sudden, but I appreciate it. Have a good time. Enjoy the rest of your whatever. We are going to be back on Fridays. This is a one-off. We're going to keep doing this on Fridays for our Draft Diary series. We're going to be back next week. We're going to talk about chapter 34. Surprise! The book doesn't just suddenly end. There's more to the book, and we got a lot to talk about. So going forward, I'm not sure. We might split these streams into 2 parts. We'll see. But chapter 34 is next. We're going to talk about the Pilgrim and all the fun and hilarity that comes with that chapter. So tune in then, folks. And until then, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.